Welcome back to Cityline. Well, often people say to me, you love all of your guests. And that's true. I do love all of my guests because it's Tacoma. We have great people. But when I think about those people who are just a little bit more in my heart, this person comes to mind. I'm talking about Maralise Hood Quan, who is the Executive Director for the Center for Dialogue and Resolution. She makes peace in her sleep look easy. Maralise, it's so good to see you.
Wonderful to see you, Amanda. It's a joy to be here.
I don't get to see you enough, and as soon as we can get together, you have a scream, a run down the hall, a jump, and a hug coming for me.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So let's refresh for a bit because we are in an interesting time right now as we're starting to come out of this, and people are starting to raise their head up and say, what's out there? Who's out there? If people don't know what the Center for Dialogue and Resolution do, what services do you provide?
So as we come out of this stay home, stay healthy, and the trauma and the economic difficulty, I'm going to be honest, Amanda, most people have tried to sweep that irritating part about another person under the rug and not paid attention. So there's some struggles, there's some difficulties. We're excited to see each other, but then there's going to be some resentments. And the center exists literally to be that third party that facilitates people actually having the conversations that they can have. And to see that by addressing our differences, by actually bringing up where there is conflict and working through it, we not only resolve the conflict, but we strengthen our relationships. So we have done that for over 25 years in family law. Before people end up at court, they can talk about how they're going to separate and dissolve a marriage. They can talk about how they're going to co-parent now that they don't live in the same house. They can talk about issues of parents with teens that, greater independence makes a little bit of stress, or even what we're dealing with right now is elder in terms of the fears of people in a family who really can't have the independence, and how do we have those conversations? We have done mediations for anything with bankruptcy, dissolving partnerships, creating new partnerships. That's our bread and butter. And there are many community members who've taken our basic mediation training in July. There's a new one in July, check the website, to be able to really show up and facilitate those difficult conversations. And Amanda, one of the things, this is not you, by the way, but there are 2/3 of the people who take our mediation class, because that's a service to the community. They end up never choosing to mediate, but they become better attorneys who can listen to their clients. They become better social workers because they don't take on all the problems. They can bring it into the classroom. They can deal with it in customer service. So that's our other piece that we offer is, how can you engage in conflict in a way that makes our community better and deepen our relationships?
If there was ever a time for conflict resolution skills, the time is now. I remember you and I having a conversation when the order came down from Governor Inslee to shelter in place. It was, wow, people are going to have a lot of conflict they have to resolve when we get the all clear. And now a year and a half later, as I look around the big world and my world here in Tacoma, there's a lot of conflict, but that conflict has been ongoing. So Maralise, usually don't you resolve conflict person to person? How did you do it over the pandemic?
So Zoom. In fact, my dear Amanda and Fred Yomes were able to learn Zoom along with the center as we began to figure out how to bring people together and connect them as human beings, even though we were isolating from the virus. And that has been a year of studying, of learning, and of engaging. Our trainings, we've actually increased the numbers of trainings that we're able to do. To be honest with you, we were doing Zoom meetings and facilitating in 2019 because Puget Sound traffic is so bad. For a 45-minute meeting, people were like, is there another option that we can do without all of us spending 4 hours to get together? And so as facilitators, we take our mediation skills, ramp them up to facilitate really engaged conversations with one another online to be able to be with one another.
Mm. And I, as you said, I've been a part of that, and it is magic to watch facilitators help people understand how to Zoom and then how to resolve an issue. It's kind of it's a double barrel hit you get there. You put a video, Maralise, that explains how Washington State's, speaking of issues we have right now, eviction resolution program empowers landlords and tenants to receive rent disputes before it could lead to a court filing and evictions. Let's take a look at that right now, and then we'll come back afterwards.
Wonderful. Great.
When people have safe places to live, that stability makes our economy and communities stronger and safer. If we didn't have landlords, where would renters live? If we didn't have tenants to pay rent, how would landlords stay in business? COVID-19 has completely changed many things, not the least of which are people's jobs, ability to pay their bills, and general sense of safety and home. Renters want to avoid the threat of homelessness. Housing providers want to avoid the threat of bankruptcy. So in late 2020, courts in Washington State launched the Eviction Resolution Program to address and provide for this potential conflict. The Eviction Resolution Program has enlisted hundreds of mediators to help landlords and tenants have productive conversations about how to meet their respective needs. If your county's Superior Court has opted into this program, here's how to get started. Anybody can contact a Dispute Resolution Center or DRC for mediation resources, whether you're a landlord, tenant, attorney, or service provider. The DRC will reach out to everyone involved to support communication about the problem. Be prepared for your call. Make sure you have all the information and documents you need to discuss the rent issue. The DRC can help you resolve the problem through mediation over the phone or online, together with attorneys if you have them.
So, Maralise, the statewide moratorium on evictions implemented by Governor Inslee last year is currently in effect through June 30th. Inslee has not yet announced whether he'll be extending this or not. You told me, start of this, when we were still kind of green room chatting, that Seattle has extended theirs until September 30th. Has the center assisted both landlords and tenants during this pandemic? And where are we?
You've actually been able to share with anyone watching Cityline the process from all the way back in July, where we're trying to reach out to people with Tacoma Pro Bono and say, guess what? There are legal resources to support you and to be able to get you into mediation. It was based on experiences like that at the local community that our Supreme Court said, you know what? Most landlord, housing provider, and tenant issues, if there's an issue of lack of payment because of the pandemic and because of the eviction moratorium, that became a reality. Economically, people couldn't pay. There's also aspects of their behavior and their communication, and that also got stopped because of the moratorium. So as we look to July 1st, what would our universe look like without an eviction moratorium? You still, and I want every single person to listen carefully. If you personally are not experiencing not having paid your rent, you know somebody in your network, or you know somebody who works with people. I need you to get the word out that the Pierce County has a portal where you can apply for back rent. And that is the most important thing to do between now and July 1st and afterwards. I want everybody to pay attention to file for that. That also opens the door to have a conversation with the center where we can help mediate, facilitate the conversation. What we've been doing while the rental assistance, which you can imagine giving out millions of dollars, using 9 of our wonderful community partners to give it out, it's had a few stumbles, technologically, communication, there's a little bit of difficulty. We've been able to keep both landlords engaged and understanding, hang in there. The back rent is going to come. The money is there. It's just getting it to you. At the same time, we've been able to work with tenants to get the paperwork in, to be able to finish it. And the reason that I say that we're useful is it's this trauma aspect that we all, it's that our brains are kind of rewired of what kind of problems and how do you do a simple task is difficult. So we have trained mediators and we have trained other staff to really listen carefully, calm the person down, and give them what are the steps. Once the rental assistance is decided, then there's a conversation to be able to have it. That can happen now. I started the sentence and it took me a long time to get back there, Amanda. What happens on July 1st? July 1st, we now have rental assistance, we have mediation, and we have legal resources. We add the 4th leg to our table, which is the court. Any landlord is able to go to court and request an eviction, but there's a speed bump. They must have engaged the center, and any center, there's all around the state, there's 21 of our centers. And we issue a certificate to say both landlord and tenant gave it their best shot, applied for rental assistance, had a conversation, couldn't reach an agreement, and it goes to court. We're still working with the court to see if there's still the opportunity to engage in that communication. But that's what the world shifts on the 1st. My biggest fear, Amanda, is people are going to look at the back rent that they owe. They're going to realize that even with the new job they just got, there's no way they're going to dig themselves out of the hole, and they're going to walk away. And they're going to leave that debt. Our county has money to pay it to the landlord, and it will follow them as a past debt. Legally, I have no legal advice. Somebody talk to legal to understand that. But the landlord needs to keep the tenant in the place so that the rental assistance will apply. The tenant needs to stay put so rental assistance will apply. And just lots of deep breaths, find somebody to hold your hand while you wait. And the center is working really hard to engage every party. We're working with rental assistance. If we've got a landlord and a tenant that agree to talk, we're talking to rental assistant and say, hey, we got a pairing, let's go forward. It's that communicating. And I guess if we have time, I want you to think. One of the clients was not responding because he had a new job and he was waiting to save up money. Oh. Another client, telephone fell in the toilet. You lose email, you lose telephone, and you lose text. We're now going back to the good old USPS to be able to get people letters. So I just want you to think of how hard communication is emotionally and physically and technically. We need to hold each other up and to support one another. And that's what I hope your Cityline listeners and community really reach out, and there's something they can do to help.
Well, what I know to be true about you and spending time with you and your team in person is that you are uplifting and educational and empowering. So on that note, if somebody doesn't know anything about the eviction moratoria, but they need to because it will help their situation. If they want to come in and talk with somebody, when does opening up look like for the Center of Dialogue and Resolution?
The center's doors are open, and we're actually have extra receptions than you've ever seen before. We're working with Terra staffing to be able to staff up. And so coming in our door still requires health screening. I want to be crystal clear. We are not planning on asking anyone if they're vaccinated, so we're protecting everyone in public spaces. So a conversation in our lobby would be 6 feet distance and having a conversation. At this time, the fastest way is to go to our website, and I know Fred has the link to it, to be able to fill the intake form, and we can help people, we can walk them through. But I want to be crystal clear. If you can't get on a computer, you can't get on a smartphone, walk through the door, and we're working on having 2 computers that are accessible, and you can fill it out to be able to do it. What will July 1 bring? We are afraid of such a large volume. If you walk in the door, you might be sitting and waiting. So remember that coming in is a good try, having another friend help you log on, figuring out how to have access and get in line to be able to support it. And then big, huge gulps of patience. Just take your extra patience vitamins in the morning, because know that Pierce County as our agency is really giving us the state funds, the federal funds, and also our local funds to be able to help all of us out of this situation.
So don't walk away from the pot of gold, renters and landlords. It's there. It's Maralise. She's kind. She's warm. No one's going to judge you. No one's going to bite your head off. It will be a beautiful process and a relief. Just do it. That's all we have. Just do it. Maralise, what are the most urgent messages that you have for our public as we all engage in one another in the upcoming months? Because I know you've got some great gems.
The first and foremost is that good old knee-jerk reaction. Somebody says something and you just react. I invite you to recognize if it's you know when you're out of control. Be honest and say, wow, that was inappropriate. Let me take a deep breath and let's do a restart. Be honest and authentic. And if you see that from someone else, if it's at the store, if it's wherever, and you said a simple request and their response was just way over, recognize that it really isn't you. Kind of act like a bullfighter and let it just kind of go by you. Take a deep breath and offer some space and time to say, that was a lot of energy you just gave me. Can we take a deep breath and re-engage? So either if you're traumatized and triggered at any moment, try to be more aware that that's happening to you and be honest and ask for the space to collect your thoughts. And if you're noticing that someone else is reacting to you in that, be gracious. Let's give ourselves, if we gave ourselves a year to figure out how to stay home, to stay healthy, can we re-engage and give ourselves grace to be able to understand that? Because as you were saying before, and I meant to come back to that, is this is probably, the pandemic is the best public relations about conflict. Everybody knows conflict is out there now. And there's conflict that is so deep and rooted in our systems, whether it be the policies, whether it be the rules that make sure some people have access and other people don't. Those are the hardest conflicts to deal with. And you don't just one and done. You actually have to keep leaning in, keep struggling, keep working with it. So I'm inviting people to recognize that as we re-engage, you're triggered by something, that gives you a sense that there's a deep well of a need to be able to resolve, and it's not going to be resolved in one conversation. So it's bringing that graciousness, each of us with ourselves and each of us with others, to be able to say, this is so deep and profound, I overreacted. We need to find the time to work through this, and I'm committed with you as a partner to deal with it.
Yes, absolutely. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the basic mediation training coming up in July. Everybody knows, I talk about it all the time, that I took that. And I thought I was a pretty good communicator before I took that. Wow. I went from tricycle communication to an 18-wheeler after taking that course and being able to say, simply, I am listening. What do you need? So how can people find out about that course?
So the best thing is going to be on our website. And in July, I want you to know that we're continuing to deliver it over Zoom, but we've added an element that actually deepens and makes it more profound. There's some individual study sessions. There's possibility of small group sort of outside the context. There's a real way to engage in a different way with the content. We have turned Zoom into an extremely interactive, engaging environment to learn things. And so it'll be the second and third week of July, and it'll be over a series of different days. We're very careful with not Zoom fatigue. So there's a 2-hour break in the middle of the day. It's summertime. Go take a walk around the block, refresh your brain. So it's not quite as intense as the in-person. And at the same time, this virtual, we've practiced it a couple times, is allowing people to really see there's a different way to communicate, a different way to listen. The power seat to change dynamics of how a person reacts is as a listener. That's a headline that's going to be in the class. And we believe that this is our signature course that helps us change the face of our community. If every single person walks away from that class and uses that, that will improve our world. And yes, we do need mediators. We need mediators of all walks of life, of all ages, of all genders, of all, as many diverse human beings as we can to show up. And that practice of mediation, it just takes it to a whole new level after the class is over.
So beautifully said. One of my favorite quotes is by a woman named Isak Dinesen, and she says, "The cure for anything is salt, the sea, and tears." And I would add to that Maralise Hood Quan and her amazing team. Thank you, Maralise. Thank you is not enough. It doesn't even come close to scratching the surface in terms of how much of your life, your experience, and your spirituality you put into this position. You never clock out. I know that for a fact, but I also know that Pierce County is better because of it. So thank you so much, and much love to your Julio.
And thank you, and to all of your listeners. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have much more to come on Cityline. Don't go away. We'll be right back.